and welcome to Anchor TV. Shot from the hub in beautiful downtown Cartersville, Georgia, the only show whose host is Mr. Bobby Lawrence. Hello, Bobby Lawrence.
What's going on, Gordon?
How are you?
What in the world have you got on today?
New format, new set of threads, man. I got this tie,
Yeah.
I got the kerchief, the shoes and the socks match the stuff. I figured I'd go classy, you know? Look at this. I leave here, I got the sunglasses to go with it. That's terrific.
Is that your funeral going clothes or your church going clothes?
Both. I'm not rich.
Well, I thought
That'll
you was
work
just
then.
wearing that to try to impress our next guest,
I am, actually. This is exactly what I'm doing. Who is our next guest, by the way?
Pastor Grant Cole.
Pastor
All
Grant
right.
Cole.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes. Hey.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be
Please,
here.
have a
Good
seat.
to be here. Yeah.
How you doing, Pastor? It's
I'm
good to
doing
see you.
good. Good to see you. Yeah.
Man, and you're the author of, what's the name of the book?
Into the darkness and out into the light. Yeah, 1 Peter 2:9, he has called us out of the darkness and into the light. And the reason I call it Into the Darkness is that when God put it on my heart to write that book, I wanted to just, share the testimony I usually share if someone asked me to share my testimony, just give a brief description of what life was like before Christ and then all about what it's been like since. But the Lord really impressed me that I needed to share how I ended up in the situation I was in.
Well, tell us a little bit about that darkness, if you don't mind.
Well, it's it kind of tells you about how I ended up in that situation. It started out innocent enough, in my family.
Yeah.
My father was a big drinker. He would give me sips of beer when I was 5 years old. At 7 years old, I'm popping tops at the parties at the lakes and stuff like that. I got into a fight with a couple of kids, and he seemed to really put his stamp of approval upon that. And so it was just these mixed signals, from my parents. They would have never wanted the things to happen that did. And then when we moved, we were growing up. I grew up in a little town, Toccoa, Georgia, up in North Georgia. And when we moved to the Atlanta area, of course, the whole drug scene was going on. I was just in the 6th grade, and I just fell in with that crowd. And, and it just one thing led to another, and I just got deeper and deeper into the darkness.
Now,
Yeah.
now, if I remember correctly, when I heard you speak, you went to prison for a while?
Well, 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah,
Oh,
3 times.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when I finally came to the Lord, it was my 3rd time to prison. Of course, I'd been through 5 different drug programs. I read all kinds of books on self-help and got involved in a cult called Scientology, a lot of people have heard of, looking for different answers, but the answers I wanted to find. That's what I was trying to make it work. I was convinced I could make it work. And so after 22 years of drug addiction, it was in 1990, they had just started giving out life sentences for drug charges in Georgia. Cobb County was the first county to do that. And I was arrested. There was about 13 of us, I believe, that were targeted for life sentences. And that got my attention.
Wow.
And
yeah.
We're at the Franklin County Jailhouse, where there's a remarkable story of a man named Charlie Berger. And in a poem written by Vernon Dalhart, it says, "I'll tell you of a bandit out in our western states who never learned his lesson until it was too late. This man was bold and fearless, the leader of his gang, but boldness did not save him when the law said he must hang. This bandit's name was Berger. He lived at Shady Rest, and people learned to fear him throughout the Middle West. 'Twas out in Old West City, Joe Adams was shot down, and then the cry for justice, these murderers must be found. Then Thomason was captured and turned state's evidence, and Berger was found guilty, who he had no defense. He asked for a rehearing, but this he was denied, and in the county jailhouse to take his life he tried. On the 19th day of April in 1928, away out west in Benton, Charles Berger met his fate. Another life was ended, the final chapter done. Another man who gambled in the game that can't be won. The 10 Commandments show us the straight and narrow way, and if we do not heed them, some time we'll have to pay. We all must face the Master, our final trial to stand, and there we learn the meaning, the houses built on sand. Charlie Berger spent a lot of time in this establishment right here. We see the cells that Charlie Berger was in, awaiting his trial and then his execution. The coal, the concrete, and the bars. Your cellmates could be seen right across. There was no privacy. One of the most solemn things is listening to the wind as it whistled and hummed through the bars as you were trying to sleep at night wondering what the outcome would be because of your sin.
Tell me the worst thing that ever happened to you in your whole life.
Well, it was May 25th, 1999. The C-Men, which is the narcotics squad in Cherokee County, came to my house. We had a meth lab at the house, and they came to the house, and we knew then that we was in big trouble.
It was the end of the line.
Yeah. At the time when they busted our lab, it was the first lab in Cherokee County, so they made a real big do about it. I mean, all the TV channels was there, there was helicopters. The sheriff said that we was the biggest drug dealers in North Georgia, but we was just drug addicts. I never thought we was that big, but that's what the sheriff said.
Wow. So how much time was y'all looking at?
Well, I knew that I'd been in trouble my whole life for drugs, so I knew that if I ever got caught again, that I'd get a life sentence because of the Habitual Act. So no matter what they was gonna give me for the drugs, I'd get a life sentence on top of that.
Life sentence.
Yeah.
And what about you?
I'd never been in trouble before.
What did you think when you got in jail?
I was scared to death.
You scared to death? And now you was just old hat to you, right?
Yeah. And they wouldn't give me a bond, but they gave her a bond. So it took about a month for them to give me a bond. So when I got out of jail, we both had ankle monitors on, those low jacks. And as soon as I got out, they came and rearrested her. Well, they came to the house, and where we live way out in the woods, and I could see that a car was coming. I knew it was the police. So I told her to run, and she ran out the back door and down into the woods. And she hid out the next morning. Then I took her to a friend of mine's up in North Carolina, up there at the reservation.
So you're looking at life in prison. So what was your next step? What was you going to do when you got out of jail?
Well, when we finally turned her in, that was the hardest thing I ever done, was turn her back in. And while she was in jail, I told her that when she got out, we'd go to church. And I'm thinking, who in the world said that? Because, see, I was 42 and I'd never been to church in my life. And she just said, okay. And so, just like any drug addict, they lie about everything. So I told her and the family and neighbors I was going to church. So now I was looking at a way to get out of it. But when she got out, we went to church. Well, we went there the first week, and we really didn't know what they was talking about. I mean, I'd never even opened the Bible, really. And so the pastor was talking about...
No Christian background, no Christian family, just, you knew nothing.
Nothing.
But something told you to go to church.
Well, I know now that that was Jesus calling our name, and we just didn't know how to answer.
And your only thought was, I gotta go to church.
Yeah. So the pastor was talking about staying in the race, and I knew that he used to drag race cars, and so did we. So I'm thinking if I come next week, he's gonna talk about some stuff
That you know about.
yeah, you know, say shave some seconds off that ET, you know. But I know now that he was talking about Paul staying in the race. But that made us come back. And when we came back, the pastor was preaching, and first thing he said is, everyone in here is a sinner. There's no one in here that's not a sinner. And I'm thinking, somebody done told him that me and Tammy was there. So we listened to the message, and when it got down to the end of the message, I don't even know what he was preaching on, really. But he come down off the stage and took his mic off, and when he stood up, I was standing right there in front of him. And I don't even know what he said, but I said, I do. And he said, well, that's the right answer. I said, okay, good. So as I was standing down there, I realized that, you know, I was down front, and there was probably 4,000 people in that auditorium. I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to turn around here in a minute. And when I was thinking and hearing everybody clapping and hollering and singing, but when I turned around, she was standing right beside me, and the Lord changed both of our lives that day at the same time, at the same place. And he knew that if he didn't change both of us, that one would drag the other down, because, I mean, we've been together forever. We've done everything together.
And y'all instantly was sobered up, give up drugs, give up alcohol, perfectly clean after that.
Yep.
No program.
No program. I've been a drug addict for over 30 years, and September 19th, hadn't drank anymore, hadn't smoked, done no drugs, no pornography.
So what you're telling me is, who the Son sets free is free indeed.
That's right.
No pill, no steps, just Jesus took that desire away from you.
Yeah.
And set you free.
Yeah.
We had tried to quit before many times, and even quit for a little while, but the drugs, it just kind of sucks you back in. But it took Jesus.
Yeah. Took Jesus. Jesus took it all.
And no more desire, just,
Nope.
Yep.
wow. So you're looking at life in prison. What now?
Well, even though, you know, we went to church, that didn't change nothing about the consequences. So after we'd been at church a couple weeks, the pastor called me to the office, and I'm thinking, here we go. You know, I've been called to a lot of offices, but never to the pastor's office. So when I went in, you know, they was just asking me about, you know, getting saved and being baptized. And they knew that we'd been in trouble, was in trouble. And the pastor asked me, he said, well, what are you going to do about that court case? And I said, well, I'm just going to plead not guilty. And the attorney said we could beat it. The pastor looked at me and said, well, that's not the truth, is it? And I thought a minute, and I said, well, no, it's not. And he says, well, he says, if you're going to live for Jesus, you got to live for Jesus for everything. And I just kind of looked at him. He says, you need to go back up there and turn yourself in and tell him you're guilty. And I looked at him, and I was just thinking, where's the love in that?
Where's the love in that?
But he said, you need to pray about that. I'd never prayed about nothing for real to Jesus about anything. But I knew instantly that that was the right thing to do. So I did. I went back and told him I was guilty of all that, knowing that I was going to get a life sentence.
I had 10 years probation, many hours of community service, picking up trash on the side of the road.
But at least you wasn't behind bars.
Yep.
This was 99, and they didn't lock me up to August,
2001?
yeah,
2001.
2001. So we went to court many times. And every time we'd go to court, they'd be, I don't know, 100 people or so to come testify about a character reference. And I didn't know all these people. I mean, there was people from the church.
Hang on. So Christians took time out of their day to come down there and testify to a member of the church that you have changed your life, that Jesus radically changed your life.
Yeah. When you go to jail, they push you in this little holding cell. And when I went to jail, there was 3 or 4 guys there. They said, "We don't know who you are, but we knew you was coming." They said, "Why are you here?" And I told them, I said, "I'm here to tell y'all about Jesus." And there was a couple of guys laying there asleep, and one guy on the phone. He hung the phone up, and those other 2 guys sat up. So I started sharing what little I know, because I hadn't been saved 6 months. So I just started telling them what Jesus had done for me and my wife, and that they could get the same freedom that I've got if they turned their life over to Christ too. So then the jailer come, and I got out and went home. So,
But I've thought about it a lot. If I was facing 15 years, I wouldn't have repented. I wouldn't have. I mean, I'd just done 2 12s and a 1, years before that.
A 212 and a 1.
Yeah, the second time. First time in prison, I had 5 7s and a 1. Second time in prison, I had 2 12s and a 1. This time, if they'd have given me 15 years, I wouldn't have repented. Now, 20 years, that'll get your attention. But that life sentence, brother, that got my attention.
Oh, yeah.
That got my attention. I fell to my knees and I cried out to God. And I said, God, because I've always known God was there. I mean, He messed with me all the time. He did. He would mess with me continuously. And but I didn't know you could have a personal relationship with Him. But I dropped and I said, God, I said, I've been through, this will be my 3rd stretch in prison. I've been through 5 drug programs. I just started pouring out all the things I've done to try. And I said, please, God, save me. And I didn't know what save being meant in the way that we understand it as Christians. I meant, I'm drowned. And I'm going to be honest with you. My attitude was either reach down here and do something or kill me, and I don't really care which one. And as soon as that peace came on me, I remember I looked across my bunk there in my prison cell, and there was a bunch of papers stacked up. And it was almost like something was radiating on and off like a neon light. And I reached over, and I grabbed out this book, and the New Testament. Doesn't that have something to do with the Bible? And I remember, though, I got to a part where Jesus said, "Woe unto all you lawyers and hypocrites, and who lay men's souls with burdens you wouldn't touch with one of your fingers." And I remember that time I threw the Bible down and I said, finally, me and God agree on something. I hate my lawyer too. And I remember I'm reading it all night long. And of course, they turned the lights off. And in my prison cell, there's like in the Cobb County Jail, there's these long, slim lights, and the searchlights kind of put a little beam coming into your cell. So I'm in there, man, and I mean, I've read through the Gospels, man, and I've gotten to the Gospel of John. And as I'm reading through, I'm beginning to pick up on what's going on. Here you had Jesus Christ, the Son of God. I had no idea why He died on the cross at this time. Didn't make any sense to me. But He was walking the earth, and He was only speaking good things, okay? But you had this other group of people over here, these Pharisees and Sadducees, who I didn't really understand them either. But they were doing their own thing, and they didn't like what Jesus was doing. And so, as far as they were concerned, you could just crucify Him. And as I began to read where they're yelling, "Crucify Him, crucify Him," it was like I felt that spirit that must have been there. It's like I just felt what must have been the atmosphere. And I remember I took that Bible and I threw it down on my bunk and I said, "Lord," I said, "I can't believe those people back then were that wicked." And all of a sudden it hit me. It was like God just hit me. Listen, I'd heard about Jesus Christ. I'd heard about the stuff He did. I can't remember where, but I'd heard about it. But you know what? I didn't care. As a matter of fact, as far as I was concerned, you could crucify Him. And all of a sudden it hit me that I was like the most wicked people I'd ever read about. It was the first time I ever realized that what I was doing was really wicked. Oh, yeah. And I kept thinking to myself, somebody needs to come in here and whip the tar out of me because I deserve it. I mean, I'm talking about, I was telling God, I said, they can put me in the electric chair and I'll never get high again. I mean, it turned me upside down that one moment.
Yeah.
And so I kept reading, right? And so I get through the Gospels and I get through the book of Acts and I hit the book of Romans. And I'm talking about now it's about daylight. And I realized, man, I'm not reading stories anymore, right? I'm into some deep stuff. And about that time, the cell door opens. And they had church call. Well, I didn't know they had church call in jail. And it's like they're trying to hide it. Because it was before daylight. Everybody's still asleep. Nobody's up, but they give church call. So I get out and I go to that church service. And they chain us all together, you know. We walk into this room, and there's this guy there. He's going to speak to us. And I knew he was a cop. You know, like, I mean, I could tell a cop, by the way, right? And I thought, man, what's the police doing preaching? And I thought, you know, I'd always, my idea of church, I'd seen movies where you went into a confessional. I thought, I know what it is. They're going to try to get us to talk. And so I'm sitting there thinking, you know, there's something funny going on here. And the first thing this guy did is he got up and told us he was an ex-police officer. And he got saved. And now he was the chaplain of the jail. And here's what blew my mind. It's like when I was reading about the difference between law and grace, not understanding it, somehow, Bobby, God let me know that my whole life was changing right there that night. Without understanding how it was happening. It was like God had given me a peace that I didn't have to worry about the police. I didn't have to worry about the court system. I didn't have to worry about my family. I just had 2 young children. I was already carrying the guilt of a younger child the first time I went to prison. I wasn't there for him. And he just put it across to me. I was starting everything new there. Well, when that guy got up, here's what he said. He explained to me that the reason Jesus Christ died on that cross was so that I could have that forgiveness I already knew I had. Okay, so it wasn't like he was teaching me something to look for. Yeah. He was explaining to me what had already happened to me by myself in a prison cell with me, the Bible, and the Holy Ghost. And then he said these words. He says, if you go through life and you don't care what Jesus Christ has done for you, you might as well be the people who nailed him to the cross. And I remember I just shouted out a cuss word. Because, I mean, I was amazed. I said, oh! And then when I did, it sounded dirty. And I thought, well, that sounds dirty because I'm in church, right? We walked back into the day room. And, of course, now everything's going on, right? People are up. Superlatives are flying everywhere. And every time I heard a cuss word, it sounded dirty. And then, of course, I cuss so bad, you know, they're coming out of my mouth, and I'm cringing. And I actually had a man come up to me and go, man, what is wrong with you? I said, I don't know. All I know is I dropped to my knee in the cell last night, cried out to God, got a peace, read the Bible all night, went to this church service, some police preached. I done prayed and asked God to come in my life. Now cuss words sound dirty.
That's good.
And I'm going to tell you something. From that moment on, God started changing my life. And he gave me a hunger and a fascination with his word.
So now you were serving a 20-year sentence then?
Okay, well, the first time...
or life.
Okay, well, I was facing a life sentence. And like I said, they had targeted 13 of us for a life sentence. My lawyer came to me and said that the only plea bargain they would give me is if I would plead guilty for 30 years, which is the same thing. Other than that, they were taking me to trial. You know, I thought I was real smart. I had all these plans. Like, I would do stuff like I had code cards, and we could communicate on beepers without speaking through numbers. And of course, the police raided someone's house and got a code card and can decipher these messages. And so they were proving that I was a career criminal, you know, that I wasn't just someone who got busted again, but it was my way of life. And so they just had all this on me. So, you know, I wasn't going to plead guilty for 30 years. I mean, that's the same thing as life sentence. The only difference is one day you'll get off parole. You know, you're not going to do any more time on life sentence if you will that. But God had other plans. I mean, do you want me to tell you about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, yeah. You're interested?
So,
Yes.
All right. So while I'm in jail, this happens the day I come back from that first church service, right? I come back in there, and I'm already amazed because something's going on, right? I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden they yell, the Gideons are here. Well, listen, I would go into motel rooms and I would pull out that Gideon's Bible and I would lean it against the curtains to make sure nobody could peek in there. So I knew what a Gideon was on the Bible, but I didn't know anything about him. And so in my mind, I'm thinking there's going to be these long, white-haired guys like from, some kind of mystical movie. They're going to be glowing out there, like what are the Gideons doing in jail?
Floating.
Yeah. And so it was amazing. All these guys line up and they're getting Bible studies. And so I come to the door and I look through the little hole and there's a guy out there and he does have a beard. He doesn't have long hair, but he is glowing. And his name was Johnny Ferguson. He's gone on to be with the Lord now. And so I said, you know, you're bringing Bible studies in here. And I said, how much are they? Because, you know, I came out of Scientology. Every time you buy a book, man, it's hundreds of dollars. You want to take a class, $5,000.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If I didn't give those people
I could afford
$30,000.
that as religion.
Oh, no, it's expensive, man. And so I'm going, how much are they? He goes, they're free. I said, they can't be free. Who paid for them? And he said, Jesus paid for them. And I've just been explaining that Jesus paid for my sins. And I'll never forget looking at that old man through that crack in the door. And I said, man, Jesus pays for everything, doesn't he? And he says, he sure does, my son. He sure does.
Hey, where'd he go? The rapture. He was raptured. You know, Kirk Cameron was right. I didn't put much stock in Kirk Cameron, but I do now.
No, serious, man. That was a great interview, wasn't it?
That was a good interview. We got to have him back.
Man, I'm telling you, he can go and go. He's got so many great stories. I'd love to have him back.
You want me to read this?
Yeah, good.
This is from his book. This is his kind of testimony here. He was a top student from a loving upper middle class family. So how did he end up serving time in 6 different prisons 3 separate times? This powerful memoir chronicles one man's remarkable journey as he struggles through various drug programs, studies psychology, and even looks to Scientology in a desperate search for answers. Finally, after finding himself threatened with a life sentence and void of any hope, God answers his prayer for deliverance. From the jailhouse to the White House, this journey is more than just a story. If you have a loved one who is addicted and or struggling to overcome addiction yourself, this inspiring book offers help and hope. And look, here's a picture. That's what he looks like.
Behind me is Charles Berger. Some call him a modern-day Robin Hood. He saved a lot of slaves from the KKK, but inside he was wretched. The Bible says we're all wretched inside. It says we're all like sheep have gone astray. It says we have all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. Though there was some very good stuff in Berger's life, he was a murderer. And Jesus said, if you hate someone without cause, you've committed murder already. Jesus even said, if you lie, bear false witness against somebody, you're just as bad as Berger here, who murdered. Sin is sin, and we need a Savior.
In the paper South LA, another kid made the news today, took a gun to school.
Anchor TV is videoed live in Cartersville, Georgia, and is viewer supported. If you like watching testimonies of how God is working in people's lives or would like to be a guest, contact us at our website. See you next week.